December 1944 in the frozen forests of the Ardennes, Belgium. Dawn light filters through bare branches heavy with frost, the air sharp with the bite of sub-zero cold. Snow muffles every sound except the distant rumble of engines echoing across the white landscape. A company of Panzergrenadiers, veterans of the Grossdeutschland Division, crouches in concealed positions along a narrow road, their breath clouding in the stillness, fingers numb on their weapons, waiting for the expected scattered remnants of American retreat. Then, through the mist, they emerge, a column of M4 Sherman tanks, olive drab hulls gleaming under a thin layer of fresh snow, advancing steadily. On their sides and turrets, large white stars stand out boldly, the paint still wet, droplets of white trickling down the armor plates in the cold, leaving faint streaks against the green. The tanks moved with purpose, engines growling low, tracks churning the mud beneath the snow, unhurried, as if the war itself bends to their arrival. This moment, captured in the recollections of German soldiers facing the onslaught of the Ardennes offensive, known to history as the Battle of the Bulge, marked a turning point in the perception of the Western Front. By late 1944, the Wehrmacht had launched its last great counterattack on December 16th, seeking to split the Allied lines, capture Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. Hitler committed over 400,000 troops, nearly 1,000 tanks and assault guns, gambling on surprise through the densely wooded Ardennes, where American forces were thinly spread and many units green or resting after the grueling campaigns in Normandy and the push to the German border. The initial German advances achieved tactical surprise, overrunning outposts and creating a deep bulge in the Allied lines. Panzer divisions like the 1st SS Panzer Corps and the 6th Panzer Army surged forward, expecting to encounter disorganized resistance. Yet, as days passed, American reinforcements poured in, bolstered by the unparalleled industrial might of the United States. Among these were fresh armored divisions, shipping across the Atlantic in vast convoys, their vehicles unloaded at Belgian ports like Antwerp and hastily prepared for combat. Tanks arrived straight from factories or depots, often receiving quick applications of identification markings, those prominent white stars, to prevent friendly fire incidents, a lesson hard learned from the chaos of Normandy. Panzergrenadiers, elite motorized infantry who had fought from the gates of Moscow to the beaches of France, had grown accustomed to a certain narrative of superiority. Their Panther and Tiger tanks, though fewer in number, possessed thicker armor and more powerful guns, capable of engaging Shermans at ranges where American shells often bounced harmlessly. They expected the Americans to field reliable but inferior machines, crewed by soldiers perceived as less hardened, supplied adequately but not overwhelmingly. In the early phases of the Bulge, captured American positions yielded evidence of comfort, canned rations, cigarettes, even chocolate, that contrasted sharply with the dwindling supplies reaching German lines, stretched thin by Allied air superiority and bombed rail networks. But what they encountered in those frozen woods was something different. The Shermans appeared not as battered survivors, but as pristine reinforcements, their white stars freshly painted, still glistening with wet enamel hastily applied in rear area depots or ports. To the watching Panzergrenadiers, motionless in their foxholes, this was no mere tactical arrival. It symbolized an inexhaustible flow. While German factories lay in ruins under relentless bombing, by December 1944, Allied air forces had dropped over 500,000 tons of bombs on the Reich, crippling production. The American assembly lines churned out Shermans at a rate unmatched. Over 49,000 M4 medium tanks were produced during the war, with variants like the M4A3 equipped with improved 76mm guns arriving in increasing numbers by late 1944. Historical records document this scale. The U.S. Third Army under General George S. Patton redirected divisions northward, committing the 4th, 9th, and 10th Armored Divisions to stem the German tide around Bastogne and beyond. The 4th Armored alone fielded hundreds of Shermans, many newly issued. German after-action reports noted the sudden proliferation of these tanks. One divisional history from the 5th Panzer Army lamented the endless columns of American armor, fresh and fully fueled, contrasting with their own vehicles running on captured gasoline or none at all. A recurring account from German veterans, echoed in post-war interrogations and memoirs, described moments of stunned silence. Soldiers who had anticipated routing demoralized foes instead watched these new Shermans roll forward, stars dripping paint, accompanied by infantry in clean overcoats, supported by artillery that seemed limitless. One Panzergrenadier officer, in a captured diary entry from the 12th Volksgrenadier Division, wrote of seeing dozens of Shermans advancing as if on parade, their markings so fresh the paint ran in the damp cold. He noted how his men, hardened by years on the Eastern Front, stood frozen, not just from fear, but from the realization that this was not a fleeting reinforcement, but a torrent. They expected scarcity mirrored in the enemy, shortages of fuel, ammunition, replacements. Instead, they faced abundance. American logistics delivered over 2 million tons of supplies monthly to the European theater by late 1944, with tanks arriving by shipload. Wet stowage ammunition rocks reduced fire risks in newer Shermans, and crews benefited from superior reliability. The Ford GAA engine in M4A3 models allowing sustained operations where Maybach engines faltered under strain. This contrast pierced deeper than materiel. Panzergrenadiers, bound to a regime that demanded total sacrifice amid growing desperation, beheld in those white stars a symbol of democratic resilience. A nation capable of arming millions without collapse, producing not just weapons, but the freedom to innovate, adapt, and overwhelm. The white star, recurring on hull after hull, became an emblem of that abundance, fresh paint signifying not haste, but endless renewal, stars shining wet against the drab of winter war. As the Bulge ground on, German momentum faltered. By January 1945, the offensive cost the Wehrmacht 100,000 casualties and irreplaceable armor, while American losses, though heavy at over 80,000, were replaced swiftly. Units like Combat Command A of the 7th Armored Division held key crossroads, their Shermans dueling Panthers in snowbound fields, numbers and mobility compensating for individual disadvantages. For many German soldiers, that first sight of pristine Shermans transformed perception. No longer was the Western enemy a temporary obstacle, it was an industrial colossus, fueled by a system that empowered production on a scale the Reich could only dream of in its final throes. Ideology, once bolstered by early victories, cracked under the weight of reality. Quotes from captured officers recorded in U.S. Army intelligence reports reveal the shift. One major from the 2nd Panzer Division admitted, "When we saw the new tanks coming endlessly, paint still wet, we knew the war in the West was decided." The recurring white star, dripping fresh paint, lingered in memory, a soundless testament to renewal, each droplet tracing the inevitability of overwhelming force. In the end, those motionless Panzergrenadiers witnessed more than tanks. They glimpsed the larger truth. Freedom's abundance, when harnessed, produces not just victory, but an inexorable tide, washing away even the most resolute defenses. In the cold Ardennes light, wet white stars foretold not merely defeat, but the triumph of a world where industry serves liberty, endlessly replenished, forever advancing.